10 countries Australians are not allowed. Today, we're diving into the countries Australians aren't allowed to visit. That's right. Even with that golden Aussie passport, there are some places in the world that slam the door shut. But why? What's going on behind the scenes in these restricted countries? Well, buckle up because this video is about to get wild. Now, for most Australians, travel is a massive part of life. With gorgeous beaches, vibrant cities, and vast wilderness, Australia is great, but we all want to explore beyond our shores. However, not every country is going to stamp your passport with a smile. In fact, some will send you packing before you even land. But what are these places? And why can't Aussies just hop on a plane and go? 1. North Korea, the mysterious hermit kingdom. North Korea is arguably one of the most isolated and secretive countries in the world. Even before we get into why Australians can't visit, let's just acknowledge that hardly anyone is going to North Korea these days. Whether it's human rights violations, secretive nuclear tests, or strict government control, North Korea isn't exactly the ideal tourist destination. Since 2017, Australians have been officially warned by their government to avoid North Korea entirely. This do not travel advice isn't just a casual warning. Anyone caught breaking it could face serious consequences, including hefty fines or worse. The situation in North Korea is so unpredictable that it's considered dangerous for any foreign visitor, especially in terms of diplomatic relations. So, unless you've got some serious James Bond-level spy skills, it's probably best to scratch North Korea off your bucket list. But don't worry, there's plenty more to unpack. 2. Syria, a war zone with no end in sight. Sadly, this beautiful ancient country has been devastated by a brutal civil war that's been raging for over a decade. Once upon a time, you could explore Syria's rich history, stunning architecture, and vibrant culture. But now, it's just not possible. With the Syrian conflict causing immense destruction and the rise of terrorist groups like ISIS, Australians, and honestly, most other nationalities, are not allowed to travel to Syria. The Australian government has placed Syria under a strict do-not-travel advisory. In fact, it's so dangerous that you could face legal action in Australia just for stepping foot there. Not only is the risk to personal safety too high, but Australians could also get caught up in extremely complex international legal issues. So, while Syria remains one of the most culturally rich places in the world, it's simply too risky to visit right now. 3. Afghanistan, a land of conflict and uncertainty. Afghanistan has captured the imagination of many adventurers, with its breathtaking landscapes and deep cultural roots. But sadly, in 2021, after the Taliban returned to power, things went from bad to worse. Afghanistan is another country that's been placed on Australia's strict do not travel list, and for good reason. The country remains highly unstable, with ongoing violence, human rights concerns, and major issues for foreigners, especially Westerners. Since the US withdrawal and the Taliban's takeover, the situation has become even more unpredictable. If you're thinking about trekking through the mountains of Afghanistan, think again. You're not just risking your safety, you're putting yourself in serious danger of getting involved in conflict, and there's little the Australian government can do to help you if things go south. 4. Iraq, a country rebuilding but not ready for tourism. Iraq is another country that falls into the do not travel category for Australians. While Iraq is slowly rebuilding after years of war and conflict, the country remains unstable, especially in areas where insurgent groups are active. The main issue here is security. There's a constant threat of terrorism, kidnappings, and attacks on foreigners. The Australian government isn't taking any chances, advising all citizens to avoid the country entirely. And it's such a shame because Iraq has so much history, from ancient Mesopotamia to the sprawling city of Baghdad. But right now, it's simply not safe for any Aussie traveler. 5. Libya, a lawless nation. Once known for its stunning Mediterranean coast and desert beauty, this country has been in chaos since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. Now it's mostly a lawless land, with multiple militias vying for control. For Australians, Libya is another no-go zone. The security situation is so unpredictable, and violent clashes can happen anywhere, at any time. Even international organizations find it hard to operate here, let alone tourists. While it might be tempting to explore Libya's ancient ruins or take a dip in its coastal waters, the risks far outweigh any reward. 6. Yemen, a humanitarian crisis. Yemen is a country that has been absolutely devastated by civil war. What was once a cultural gem of the Arabian Peninsula is now facing one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. The conflict in Yemen has left millions of people displaced, and the situation is dire. For Australians, the government has issued a strict do not travel warning due to the high risk of violence, terrorism, and kidnapping. Yemen's beauty is undeniable, but the reality on the ground is heartbreaking. It's simply not a place that Australians, or anyone, should visit right now. 7. Iran, political tensions, and diplomatic strain. This one is a bit different from the others on the list because, unlike war zones, Iran is still relatively safe in many parts. But for Australians, it's all about politics. Iran and Australia have had a complicated relationship, especially as political tensions between Iran and the West have escalated. While it's not completely forbidden to travel here, the Australian government advises extreme caution, especially since some Western travelers have been detained on vague charges. Visiting Iran could land you in hot water if you're not careful, so it's definitely one to approach with caution. If you do go, be sure to follow every law to the letter and understand the risks involved. 8. Somalia, a haven for piracy and lawlessness. Next on our list is Somalia. Now, Somalia's coastline is stunning, but don't let those tropical waters fool you. This East African nation has one of the highest piracy rates in the world. The Australian government has placed Somalia on its do not travel list, and for good reason. Beyond piracy, Somalia suffers from a lack of effective government, ongoing violence between militant groups, and the threat of kidnapping. Even humanitarian workers and journalists struggle to navigate Somalia's dangerous environment. For Aussies looking for adventure, this one's a no-go, unless you fancy dealing with pirates. 9. South Sudan, a new nation in chaos. South Sudan is one of the world's newest countries, but it's also one of the most unstable. Since gaining independence in 2011, South Sudan has been plagued by civil war, famine, and ongoing ethnic conflict. The Australian government warns against all travel to South Sudan due to widespread violence and political instability. The lack of infrastructure, food shortages, and healthcare makes it incredibly dangerous for any foreigner, let alone an Australian tourist. Even though it's a young country with so much potential, South Sudan isn't ready for tourists just yet. It's a country that needs peace, not visitors. 10. Saudi Arabia, strict rules and cultural barriers. Australians can technically visit Saudi Arabia, but only under very strict conditions. While Saudi Arabia has opened up in recent years, especially with its new tourist visa program, Australians need to be incredibly cautious. This is a country where strict Islamic law governs everyday life, and any misstep could land you in serious trouble. Public behavior, women's rights, alcohol, and even what you wear are all closely monitored. Although Saudi Arabia is modernizing and even promoting itself as a tourist destination, the risks for Australians, especially those unfamiliar with the culture, are high. But hey, if you're curious about exploring ancient Arabian cities and the new futuristic projects in the desert, make sure you know the rules inside and out. So there you have it. These are some of the places Australians can't, or really shouldn't visit. From political tensions to full-on war zones, the world can be a tricky place for travelers. But don't lose hope. There are still so many incredible countries that are open, safe, and ready for you to explore. The good news? With over 190 countries in the world, there's always a new adventure just around the corner. So grab your passport, check the travel advisories, and get ready for your next adventure. Just make sure it's somewhere you're actually allowed to go. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more travel tips, guides, and updates. Stay safe and happy travels.